What if education isn't failing, but simply misaligned with the realities of economic mobility? I'm going to love this topic and hope you do too. Good morning and welcome to Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership that delivers results AM talk show. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, and today we are tackling one of the most critical and often misunderstood drivers of poverty disruption. You're right, education, but not education as a system of completion, education as a system of economic mobility. Today's episode is titled Education to Economic Mobility Aligning Learning Systems with Real Outcomes. Agenda 2030 in action. Let's connect this to Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 4, SDG 8, sorry, back up. SDG 4 is quality education, SDG 8 is decent work and economic growth, and SDG 10 is reduce inequalities. Make one thing clear: education is not the end goal, it is a pathway to opportunity. But here's the challenge: too many systems measure success by, it's early, y'all. Let me repeat that. But here's the challenge: too many systems measure success by graduation rates, completion metrics, enrollment numbers. Instead of asking a key question, what's that question, Dr. Dorsey? Thanks for asking. The key question is: did education lead to economic advancement? Hmm. Let's begin by examining where education systems are misaligned with economic outcomes. Let's do that by grounding it in reality. A student by the name of Keisha graduated with a degree, as most are during this season, but struggled to find employment in her field. I know that sounds familiar. She had education, but no applied experience. What do you think the result was for Keisha? Correct. Underemployment. The truth is, education without alignment to workforce demand limits mobility. Agenda 2030 emphasizes not just access to education, but relevance and outcomes. So, if the system is misaligned, what does alignment actually look like? That means education must connect directly to opportunity. It's early, y'all, but we're here. And when education connects directly to opportunity, that means that partnerships between educators and employers take place. That means curriculum aligned with industry demand and experiential learning opportunities. I happened to be speaking with a colleague in the industry over the weekend, and what he shared with me was that they have a training program embedded with internships into the curriculum. So as they're going through, that course, then they're actually taking part in an internship um, for that applied learning. So students are not only graduating with theory, but they're also graduating with the knowledge, with the experience as well. And as a result of this in, intertwining of the internships inside the curriculum, students are graduating with both knowledge and experience, and job placement rates increase significantly. So, that alignment that this training program offers does transform education into success. But in today's culture, across industries, and in most places, do offer um, internships embedded in curriculum. But why is underemployment still taking place? Um, and so that leads to the next question. Must alignment also include access to opportunity? That's taking it a bit further. So, access is not equal across communities because access could just mean, hey, I'm gonna, you've done this internship, you're completed your program, and here's a list of websites to go to apply to. Or the student has access to the pipeline, but lack soft skills, lack hard skills, lack communication skills, lack research, lack follow through, lack dress to success, lack a number of things. So barriers also include the cost of education. Barriers also include geographic limitations. Barriers also include digital divides. And so in a rural community, when a rural community lack access to advanced training programs, leaders must introduce different things. Leaders must introduce virtual learning options. It's tough shifting from face to face to online learning, but what we learn, or what society learn, and what cultures come to depend on since COVID 2020 is that you have to have more of a diverse learning or learning options than just face to face if you really want to meet the needs of those that you serve. So, virtual learning opportunities are for sure one of those ways. Local training hubs. I know that I didn't get hip to local training hubs until maybe about 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Um, and I get it, but I don't get it because I personally never needed it. But obviously, local training hubs are quite efficient and effective. And financial support. Financial aid isn't always going to be available based off X, Y, and Z, elemental P. But if there are opportunities to partner with um, banks or funders or investors, that's a chew in and a way in to get people in that pipeline. In all three of these things or options that leaders introduce, from virtual learning to learning training hubs to financial support, would increase participation. And when participation is increased, everyone wins. And access determines who benefits from opportunity. That's literally the bottom line. In addition to what leaders must introduce, education must extend beyond initial learning. It must be continuous. And we talked about this many episodes ago. So please go back and make sure that you dive into those episodes that talk about upscaling and rescaling and continuous learning opportunities and those benefits to your bottom line of return on investment, human capital, all of the above. Because the future requires continuous skill development. A mid-career worker by the name of Luis reskilled through short-term certification programs. Absolutely best opportunity. And as a result of Luis rescaling, he transitioned into a higher paying industry. He come to learn that learning is no longer a phase, but it's a lifelong process. And that's whether you have a high school diploma, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, depending on what industry or field you're in, because it may not be considered a professional degree anymore, or even a doctoral degree. You know, education is a lifelong process. So, Agenda 2030 reinforces this through inclusive, equitable, lifelong learning opportunities. But even the best systems fail without accountability. So now we're going to hurt some feelings a little bit. But in order for us to move past the old and move into the new and challenge us as leaders, sometimes the truth has to be discussed and we got to ruffle some feathers sometime. And so, in order for accountability systems not to fail, accountability is needed. And so, what must leaders do to ensure accountability? Leaders must track job placement rates. That's a consistent theme that we're talking about each episode. Leaders must track wage progression. Leaders must track career advancement. All of these things are important. What's happening inside of your training program, and then what happens on the other side. And leaders must track long term economic mobility. And that is extremely important. You know, recently doing research on Agenda 2030 and my new publication that's coming out, I happen to, research some institutions. And one of the institutions that I took a look at, they are shifting from tracking graduation rates to tracking 5-year economic outcomes. Brilliant, because that really sounds like a business model, right? And so this institution changed their program design to improve impact. And I thought it was wonderful. And because what gets measured shapes what gets delivered. And that shifting of what that institution did from measuring graduation rates to the 5-year economic outcomes is something that many of us can take into mind, into lesson, once we understood what that means and how it's done and how it relates to our business and our industry. Whew, we packing a lot here today. This is why it's important for you to be able to show up, listen, dissect, break down, and apply what is relevant to you, right? And finally, education must be community centered. And I would take it a step further. You know, there are a lot of educational institutions out there. There are a lot of organizations that are doing training that really do what they do best. But my question is, what makes you unique? What makes your organization stand out above the others? Remember, you have for your colleges that are competing against each other, PWIs and HBCUs. You have community colleges that are competing against one another, not just from a geographic location, but what they're offering. You have nonprofits that are designing programs. You have for-profits that are designing programs, and they're all great and they're all needed. But in addition to what we're talking about and making not just tracking programs, but creating 5-year economic outcomes and extending training programs into the curriculum and then taking it one step further by providing a pipeline access, what makes your training program and lifelong process and educational opportunities different from others? That is going to be another key factor that's going to drive people towards you, or you're going to be a part of the quantity that is overcrowded. Yep, pretty much. So community understand their needs best. And when you understand, as an organization or as a leader, when you understand your community needs best, you're going to better position your company, your organization, your training program to one that is going to be more of an attraction than a disruption, right? And we're not talking about poverty disruption. We're talking about disruption in the sense of people saying, why should I go here when I can go here, right? And so leaders need to engage communities in program design. What's happening within a 2 mile radius of your business, or those that you say you want to serve, or the culture, underserved, underserved, females, males age 25 to 45. That's including them in that program design. And how do you do that? You can include people or your um, targeted audience in your program design simply by surveying, right? Putting it out there, just like a researcher would do, and see what you're getting back. Also, partnering with training programs or education, institutions to see if you can have access to part of their data. Doubt it, but all you got to do is ask, right? Leaders must align education with local economic realities. Now, this will take some partnering with your local economic and workforce development. It's going to take partnership maybe with your local CTE programs or educational systems or state educational programs. And leaders must co create learning pathways. This is extremely important, especially as we continue to talk about cross sector. Um, Population, cross sector working together, just cross sector in general, because no one person, no one organization, no one leader can do it all, because education succeeds when it reflects real world conditions. And that's real talk. That is not a flex, that's not a push, that's not a jab, that is real. In order to really, but the thing that I always come back to, when we're talking about um, engagement, co-creation, multi-sector, is that it's only going to start with the person that is person's reflection in a mirror. If you don't get up every day and really hone your craft and focus on what really works and for you as a person, as a leader, overcome your own barriers, your own adversities, pat yourself in the back for what you do great, then nothing that you do is going anywhere quick. So many of programs fail because it's a good program, but it's not a system. Many of programs fail because the leaders aren't leading, they're managing. A lot of programs fail because it's one hit wonder and they're afraid to let people in on a conversation, or they're not protecting their intellectual property. It's failing because of you, boo. So if you failing as a leader, then your program is not off the ground. It's going to soar and plunder quickly. Whoops, sorry, true verse. First thing in the morning, but gotta do, right? So education succeeds when it reflects real world conditions, and leaders succeed when they reflect mirrored images and improve upon it, right? Boom, mic drop. Let's keep rolling. So let's bring this into action, right? And I love a leadership challenge, and I hope you do too. So, here is your leadership challenge. Identify one gap between education and employment in your organization or community. So, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you observing? What is the news telling you, right? Those type of things. And then once you've identified one gap between education and employment in your organization or community, build one partnership to close that gap. Yes, you have to talk to people. You have to get out from behind your community, your computer. You have to get out from behind The keyboard, you have to pick up the phone, you have to go outside your door, other than to the grocery store, to that concert, and have a real conversation with people. And then I want you to track one long term outcome tied to economic mobility. Because here's the truth: education is not successful when it ends, it's successful when opportunity begins. And leaders who align education with economic mobility are the ones who create sustainable pathways out of poverty, because that's what this is about: disrupting poverty through leadership. Boom, we did it, y'all. We made it. If this episode challenged how you think about education, which I'm hoping it did, follow Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Delivers Results AM Talk Show. Share one way you are aligning education with opportunity. Tag an educator or leader who is committed to real outcomes, because disrupting poverty requires more than education. It requires education that leads to opportunity, mobility, and lasting change. Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful episode. I hope you enjoyed the topic, the conversation, and the leadership challenge. Until next time, have a great day. Share this with another. Download, take notes. Let me know how things are going, because right now, hopefully, you've grown mind, body, soul, and through leadership, disrupting poverty. Until the next time, have a great day, and I'm out.